What is going on, Pacer Nation? Welcome back to another episode of Bring the Juice Pacers. Your guys, Derek and Cody, with you as always. Guys, the Indiana Pacers moving on to the Eastern Conference Finals, where they will take on the Boston Celtics. A lot of stuff that has gone on between these two teams here, Cody. This one definitely where the Pacers are not the front runner here. It is definitely the series in which the Boston Celtics have the clear advantage in this one. But we're talking about it in the other video, man. This Indiana Pacers team, they really don't have a whole lot to lose, as you said in the previous video, because everyone expects them to lose. When everyone expects you to lose, you have a lot less expectations to be placed on your shoulders. What do you think? Do you think that gives them any kind of advantage against the Boston Celtics in this one?
I certainly think just when you play and you don't have, like you said, you don't really have anything to lose. I think it allows you to play more freely. I really do. I think it allows you to just say, why not us? You know, and like for the Boston Celtics, we talked about it. Like the Boston Celtics have a ton more pressure because they're expected to win, right? So a ton more pressure to take care of business. And I think really, Derek, out of any of the teams that played them in the East this year, the Boston obviously the best team in the East, and it wasn't even close. But of all the teams to play them, I think Indiana actually played them fairly well. I mean, I only count, Derek, really like 2 games in this series where it was more than a couple point difference. So that's definitely interesting. I mean, you point to the first game, but Derek, that was early in the season before you had Pascal Siakam and some of these other guys stepping into the roles they're currently at. And so the other games that they've had, they've been fairly close. They really have. The Pacers won 2, the Celtics won 3. So I do think this has the potential, Derek, to be a lot more interesting than a lot of people said. It's interesting because I was talking to people, just about it yesterday. There's a lot of people that said, we're just going to go get smacked by the Celtics. And I'm like, I just don't agree. Like, I just don't think it's going to be as simple as Boston is that much better than Indiana. Record-wise, of course, yes. But with the way that Indiana's playing right now, I do think they have a chance in this. Are they going to win it? Now, that's a different story. We'll have to see. But when it comes to how Indiana is right now, I mean, a team that we talked about far have outweighed and outlived the expectations that were placed on them. I think that does allow them to honestly, Derek, go out there and have a chance to shock the world and really not have to hang their heads, but still have that motivation like we've seen this entire playoff series for the Pacers. The last 2, the Pacers have not been favored in any of those either, So especially this last one against the New York Knicks, everybody picked the Knicks. I mean, everybody did. So, yeah, the Pacers are not, like, this isn't foreign to them that everybody expects them to lose. But here they are, man, standing only 4 games from, a potential trip to the NBA Finals, 4 wins away. So we'll see. So, yeah, man, I think when it comes to that, the Pacers have a great chance here to really shock the world in a lot of ways and do something just like they did with the Knicks to win games, honestly, in series that they're not supposed to win.
Absolutely, man. You mentioned it. The amount of times that they played the Boston Celtics 5 times this season. And of the only 18 losses that the Celtics have had this year, 2 of those have come from the Indiana Pacers. So, I mean, the Pacers have been one of those teams that have been, back and forth with the Boston Celtics throughout this whole matchups. So, I mean, this is definitely a series in which the Pacers do know what they're capable of. I will say this, man. This is definitely the most talented team that they faced throughout this entirety of this playoffs. And, I mean, this is definitely the sort of situation where Boston's going to thrive because when you're facing the same team back-to-back in several different times, it makes it a little easier to know tendencies. Boston obviously has had a little bit more rest time. Their last game was on the 15th against Cleveland, and the Pacers' last game was the 19th. Obviously, they have 4 extra days rest to get prepared for this upcoming series than what the Pacers do. The one great thing we've always talked about Cody, with the Pacers is obviously the pace at which they play. They play it the fastest of any team in the league. They score more points than anyone else in the league. But remember, the Boston Celtics also have the second best offense in the NBA as well. So does it almost concern you with the way the Pacers like to play that putting the ball in the hands of Jason Tatum that many times might actually come as a disadvantage for the Indiana Pacers? And do you think that they're going to potentially slow the game down because of it, or do you expect them to continue to be fast paced?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, I think for me, I think you don't go away from who you are. I know Boston can run right there with you, but that's what we've seen Indiana do, and we've seen them thrive. Now, I will be intrigued. You kind of mentioned, Indiana being the best offense and Boston being the second. Like, it's a matter of defense for me. Like, which team steps up defensively? Because we know both these teams can score and score whenever they want. But which team defensively really can step it up? I mean, Boston, they can do some things defensively. They really, really can. But also Indiana has started to step it up defensively. So I am very intrigued at that. You mentioned Jason Tatum. Obviously, we know the kind of player he is. Jaylen Brown, two real superstars right there for the Boston Celtics. I do think Indiana will have the advantage when it comes to some of their bigs, though, with Miles Turner and Pascal Siakam. I do think that's where they have the advantage, while Boston might have, when it comes to some of those other positions. I think Indiana, there are both, strengths and weaknesses of both these teams. And I think some of the perceived weaknesses of Indiana might favor Boston, while vice versa, when it comes to that. So it's going to be really intriguing, but it's something where I do think Indiana, similar to what they had to do against New York, I think like Pascal Siakam, Miles Turner, they got to continue to be on, man. They got to continue to be on, do what they do, and I think that'll give Indiana a great advantage there if those guys can continue to play at a high level, because, I mean, there's not really comparatively to what Boston, has. I do think Indiana has the advantage there. I will be intrigued about Kristaps Porzingis as well. Yes. It looks like he might not make the first couple games, so that will definitely be one that is interesting and worth monitoring as well. But yeah, Boston certainly, like you said, I think they're the most talented team, honestly, in the NBA at this point. I mean, they got talent all over the floor. But Indiana, I think, Derek, another thing that Indiana has an advantage of is what we saw in Game 7 and throughout that Knicks series is the depth. Indiana has tremendous depth. I think they had the best depth in the NBA, to be honest with you, with guys like T.J. McConnell, Obi Toppin. We mentioned, obviously Ben Shepherd, the rookie, as well. So they have 3 guys off the bench that can come in and put quality minutes in for you, and you feel really good about that. So, yeah, I do think there are definitely, like, Boston clearly right now, I mean, they're the more talented team. Like, we can say that, I think. But Indiana plays hard, man. They really do, and I think they have a good chance in this game to take advantage. And, there are definitely advantages for Indiana and advantages for Boston. So, at the end of the day, which one comes through? Which one shines the most? We'll have to see.
Yeah, you mentioned Kristaps Porzingis. That definitely will be the interesting tidbit here because, yeah, when Kristaps got added to Boston, I mean, he fit right in. I mean, when you got a guy that leads your team in steals and blocks, and when the guy's 7'2" and can play not only under the rim but can play out beyond the 3-point line as well, I mean, that just makes it so difficult for any kind of matchup. And, there's only one guy on the Indiana Pacers that even has a legit chance to even try to guard that guy, and that's Miles Turner. So we will have to see if the Indiana Pacers are able to take advantage of that mismatch in the fact that, your best guy underneath is not going to be available for at least the first game. But yeah, as we mentioned before, I mean, Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown, both guys averaging over 20 points a game this year. Drew Holiday being added into the mix. Drew Holiday, who's always been known, I mean, he most recently known for his run with the Milwaukee Bucks when they won that national championship. I mean, Drew Holiday is a guy that plays extremely hard defense and gets you a few points every once in a while. We'll have to see how Tyrese Halliburton handles that because, I mean, let's face it, Cody. I mean, the Knicks tried to play defense on Halliburton, but I mean, like you saw, as the series went on, they just couldn't quite hang on to him anymore because they were wearing down and he wasn't. Even with the Bucks, like that was just Tyrese being less aggressive. That didn't really have anything to do with the defensive scheme, I don't think. But I mean, you got a bunch of different guys here on that front court for the Boston Celtics that all can guard practically anyone out there on the perimeter. I mean, Tatum, Brown, Drew Holiday. I mean, heck, as old as Al Horford is, he's certainly no slim pickings there either. So, they do have a extremely loaded team, especially on the front end, with a bunch of guys that definitely know how to play some great defense. I think that's what concerns me the most of this situation is, Indiana clearly can shoot very well, but I do wonder if the defense for the Boston Celtics is going to get to the Indiana Pacers at all throughout this series. What say you to that?
Yeah, you mentioned, I mean, just the talent is it's everywhere, right? And Boston definitely has the capability to play really good defense, and they do have a good defense. But yeah, I mean, that definitely is concerning, no doubt about that, because really Indiana hasn't played a team that you would say has great defense so far. So, what does that kind of look like? And I think it really does come down to what kind of version of Tyrese Halliburton do we get? Do we get Game 7 of Tyrese Halliburton, or do we get what we've seen in previous series where he's not taking shots and there's just issues there, or he's just off? Now that'll be interesting to me to see. Can they slow him down in any capacity? I think if he plays with that kind of confidence, I don't think there's much you can do if you're the Boston Celtics. But yeah, Boston can go toe to toe with anybody, no question about it. They can play good defense, like you said, and obviously they can score, like nobody's business. So yeah, man, I think they definitely are just. There's a reason they're the 1 seed. I mean, no doubt, they're the reason they're the best team in the NBA, the record wise this year. So no question about that. But yeah, like we mentioned, Derek, I mean, Indiana does have a shot, though, because they have played them pretty well this season. They probably played them better than about any other team this year. So that's definitely good news for them. But yeah, it's going to be a tough series, Derek. I mean, no doubt. Clearly the most loaded opponent the Pacers have played so far. And I think it's going to be a challenge, no doubt about that. And Boston's healthy, too, which is definitely relatively healthy, I should say, compared to some of these other teams. That's definitely another thing as well for Indiana.
Yep, it's going to be a fun series, no doubt about it. I'll tell you one thing, Cody, just before we get off here. I mean, I don't know if it's just people being salty over the fact that the Knicks are not facing the Boston Celtics, which I think is probably what it is. But you see people talking about how this series won't be fun. And I'm like, you mean the best team in the NBA, who might be expected to win it all, versus a team that has the best offense in the NBA and was one of the few teams that actually gave the Boston Celtics a little bit of trouble this whole year. You're telling me that series is not going to be fun? Like, are you serious? You sound like a salty Knicks fan at that point.
Yeah, it's going to be fun. It's going to be fun. Like, I mean, 2 high-scoring teams that definitely know each other pretty well. So it's going to be a fun series, man. I'm really looking forward to it. And, while I'm not saying Indiana's going to win, I do think they have a chance. I really do think they have more of a chance than people are saying. I do. Now, again, we talked about it, Boston, the number 1 seed. So not shocked at all if Boston, runs away with this. But if the Pacers can play consistently and with some of that maturity we've seen them kind of develop throughout these 2 series, I think they could do it, Derek. I think they could. Now, will they? I don't know, but they can. I mean, they definitely can. Yep. So we'll be really intrigued. And obviously, if their offense continues to stay hot, if their defense, at least is average, I think they're going to be just fine in this series.
Absolutely, man. Well, that's going to do it for this one, ladies and gentlemen. Let us know your thoughts on the Indiana Pacers versus the Boston Celtics. How do you expect this series to go? Cody, I mean, let's give the honesty here. What do you think? Do you have who do you think wins the series and how many games?
I think it'll go to at least 6 games.
I think it'll go to 6.
But I mean, it's hard to pick against Boston just because they're so talented. So, I mean, I'm going to say Boston, just because I think that's the safe pick. But maybe I should go a little bit crazy. But I think logically, the good pick is Boston here, just because they've been more consistent, and I think they are just the most talented team in the NBA. So I'm going to say Boston, but I do think Indiana will give them quite a challenge.
Yeah, I think it goes 6 games as well. I mean, I think the Celtics are going to end up taking it, but again, I'll be rooting for the Indiana Pacers all the way. Doesn't matter, but we're going to end it here, guys. Thank you so much for all the support on this channel recently. Again, let us know your thoughts on this series. But that'll do it for this one. Thank you so much. And as always, go Pacers.